When the ravens began to speak in the library tower, Samwell Tarly thought at first that it was only the wind. The wind in Old Town had its own voice, or so the novices claimed. It came in from whispering sound and slipped around the white stones of the high tower and through the alleys of the city, gathering the talk of sailors and fishwives and merchants until it was swollen with words. Up here, in the high, round chamber where the citadel kept its oldest books and the dust lay in soft gray drifts on the floor, the noise of the city became a distant murmur. The wind rattled the shutters and moaned around the slate roof and sighed down the stairwell like a tired old man. It did not usually call his name. Sam, it croaked. He nearly dropped the candle. Fat and slow and frightened, that was what his father had called him, and all of it was true. But Samwell had never thought himself so frightened as he was then. The flame wobbled in his hand, casting the shelves into wild, leaping shadow. The ravens in their wicker cages stirred and rustled, black wings shivering, bead-bright eyes glinting. The word came again, clearer. Sam. Sam gulped. Who's there? His voice sounded small and absurd, a boy's voice, though he had seen the wall and the haunted forest and the faces of dead men that moved. Samwell Tarly, said the raven very distinctly. Sam, Sam, Sam. He turned toward the sound. The bird was big, its breast freckled with white, its beak cruel and pale. Its eyes looked like drops of obsidian. There was a ring of brass around its leg, green with age, and a thin chain ran from ring to cage. Sam had never seen that bird before. He would have remembered. He swallowed again. You shouldn't be speaking. Not like that. Maester Eamon's ravens, they just repeated words. They didn't. Samwell, said the raven, and then, in another voice, Snow. It shook its wings and cawed in a harsh, broken rhythm. Snow, snow, snow. John Sam thought. His heart gave a painful little jump in his chest. He saw again the courtyard of Castle Black lit by torchlight, the ring of black cloaks, the knives moving in and out like fish through water. For the watch, they had said as his friend fell. Rattleshirt's bones had cracked beneath a lord's skin. Melisandre's red eyes had watched. The memory stabbed at him. Sam, said the raven. Sam. Book. I know I'm in the library, Sam said, because his wits often failed him when he was frightened and silly words were better than none. There are a great many books. Do you mean that you want one? Ravens don't read. They can't read. Book, the bird insisted. Then it cocked its head, as if listening to some invisible whisper, and another voice came spilling out of it, rough and deep and strange, with the faintest hint of an accent he did not know. The light that has been sleeping must be called. The words are the tinder. The blood is the spark. Sam gaped. The candle drooped in his trembling hand, wax spilling hot over his knuckles. What did you say? The raven hopped along its perch. His claws clicked on the wood like tiny fingers. Book, it said again, peevish now. Book, book, Sam, book. There were hundreds of books in the tower. More than that, thousands. Tomes bound in cracked leather and swollen vellum, scrolls wrapped in flaking silk, slabs of lead inscribed with thin, spidery letters, shards of fired clay etched in a language no one in Old Town could read. They lined the shelves from flagstone floor to curved stone ceiling. They were stacked in tottering columns on the floor. They lay like sleeping beasts atop the tables. They smelled of dust and mold and the ghosts of long-dead hands. Which one? Sam whispered hoarsely. I can't. I don't know which one you mean. The bird stared at him, and then all at once every raven in the room began to cry out. Their voices rose in a harsh, flapping chorus, black wings beating, beaks clacking. Sam, book, light, fire. Some. Samwell flinched and nearly fled. If he had been the boy he'd once been, he would have run stumbling down the stairs, heart hammering, not stopping until he found Pate or All-Eras or some other novice, some other human shape, someone else to face the terror. But that boy had walked into the haunted forest with only a dragonglass dagger and his terror for company. That boy had stabbed an other through its cold, bright heart. His knees still knocked together, but he stood where he was, clutching the candle like a drowning man clutches driftwood. "You need a book," he said very carefully, as if reasoning with a child. "Well, let's find it then." He moved to the nearest shelf, squinting at the faded leather spines in the candlelight. The words crawled under his eyes. His training at the Citadel had sharpened skills he'd begun at Castle Black. Letters and lines no longer seemed to dance quite so much. But the script here was old and cramped, the ink brown with age. Can you give me a hint?" he tried. "History, perhaps? Or prophecy? The higher mysteries? Conjunctions of stars? Movements of comets? The raising of stones?" The raven flapped its wings. A feather drifted down like a bit of fallen night. "Black," it said. "Red. Sunday salt and smoke. Song. Sword. Snow." Sam's mouth went dry. "Azor Ahai," he whispered. The ravens fell still. In the sudden silence, the sea's murmur seemed loud as thunder. It was only a whisper, only a name in a book, a tale that Melisandre had told in Maester Eamon's hearing, a story of a hero who had plunged his burning sword into the heart of the woman he loved. Sam had not liked that story. It had tasted of iron and ash and cruelty. "Azor Ahai," the strange raven agreed in that deep borrowed voice. "The prince that was promised, the warrior of light, the fire in the darkness, the torch that sets all of our torches burning." "Jon," Sam said helplessly. "Daenerys Targaryen, Stannis Baratheon. There are so many." The raven laughed. It was a horrible sound, like claws on slate. "Swords," it croaked derisively. "Kings, killers, blood and steel. Men love their swords, but the world is written before it is won. The song is written." Sam had never liked that other story either. The one in the old books, the one that said the gods wrote all that was and would be, and men only danced to strings. Maester Aemon had smiled when he told it, though blind eyes turned toward some light only he could see. "The world is written," Sam murmured, sweating. "In words, in ink, in blood," whispered the raven. "In tears, in ash, in names, in names," Sam echoed. "Yours," said the bird. He stared. His heart beat too fast, too loud. He could feel it in his throat, his fingertips, his tongue. It made his words clumsy. "And mine? I can't even be a proper maester yet. I haven't forged my chain. I've only just—" "You have walked with the cold ones," the raven interrupted, in another new voice, old and thin and cracked like ice on a pond. "You have carried the blood of dragons and of deer to the ends of the world. You have read what should not be read and lived. You have broken oaths and made new ones. You have killed with glass, boy. Words are only glass, sharper than any sword." Sam clenched his eyes shut. "I don't want to be a hero," he said, the words bursting out of him like a child's sob. "Heroes die." Soft feathers brushed his cheek. He flinched and opened his eyes. The raven had come to the front of its cage, pressing against the lattice of wicker. Its eyes were very dark, very deep. Sam had seen eyes like that once before in a weirwood tree. "That is the only reason heroes are useful," it said. In the morning, no one believed him. He tried Pate first because Pate would have believed anything once. But Pate was dead, and in his place was a man with Pate's face and someone else's eyes. He only smiled thinly when Sam babbled about talking ravens and prophecies muttered in borrowed voices. "Birds repeat what they hear," the false Pate said, stirring his porridge with slow, deliberate motions. "Maester Aemon's birds learn tricks from the red woman north of the wall. Tricks have long tails. You're tired, Sam. You read too much by candlelight. You know what the archmasters say about that." Sam knew. Too much study, they said, and not enough sleep makes for strange sights and foolish fancies. Knowledge must be balanced by prudence. Wisdom lay in moderation. The Citadel believed that everything could be tamed and pinned to a board if only one was patient and careful enough. Men, books, the very heavens. He tried all eras next. The Sphinx only laughed, dark eyes dancing. "You are the sweetest fool in Old Town," all eras told him fondly, flinging an apple core at his head. "If a raven told you that you were secretly a Dornish prince, would you run off and claim Sunspear? I'll come visit you in your palace, Sam the Bold." "I'm not bold," Sam muttered, brushing apple from his hair. "And I'm not a prince, and I don't want a palace. I only think the birds speak with 100 voices." Alara's smile faded, just a little. "You shouldn't talk like that where the archmasters can hear." Sam looked around the hall. It was filled with novices and acolytes, black and gray and white, the colors of charcoal and parchment and unlit candles. No one was paying them any mind. 2 boys were arguing over a dice game. An older acolyte was telling a story in a low, urgent voice. The listeners' faces were pulled tight with fear, and Sam caught the words White Harbor and dragons and again over the clatter of dishes. "Something's happening," he said. All ears shrugged. "Something is always happening. Here, less than elsewhere. That is the point of Old Town, isn't it? It endures. Your talking birds will be forgotten before the next tide turns." But they did not forget. The ravens waited. All day Sam felt them in the back of his mind, like 100 small eyes watching him. He tried to ignore them. There was work to be done. He had copied 3 charters and an edict of King Jaehaerys the Conciliator and a long, tedious treatise on drainage in rice fields before the sun reached its height. After that, he delivered messages for the seneschal, climbed the high tower stairs twice to fetch a misplaced astrolabe, sorted herbs in the infirmary until he sneezed himself silly, and listened to Archmaester Ibroz expound upon the proper care of lepers. The words slid over him like cold water. He could not seem to hold them. Every time he reached for some dry fact, a black wing beat in his memory and he heard again that harsh chorus. Sam, book, light, fire. By dusk his head ached. He climbed back to the library tower with steps made clumsy by fatigue. The door opened on its familiar creak. Dust motes swam in the last slanting light. The ravens turned their heads as one. "Sam," said the strange one on its high perch. He closed the door behind him and leaned his back against it. "If this is one of Marwyn's tricks," he said desperately, "it isn't funny. I'm not a candle to be lit, or a pig to be stuck with pins, or a... Marwyn is a hammer searching for nails," the raven said. "You are not a nail. Yet. I don't want to be a hammer either," Sam said. "The sword does not choose whether it will be forged," the bird replied. "The steel is what it is. Only the fire and the hand upon the hilt decide." "I'm not steel," Sam said miserably. "Exactly," said the raven. Took him a foolish moment to understand. "Steel is hard," he said slowly. "It kills. It breaks," said the raven, its voice old again, papery and thin. "Rusts. For all their pride, the sword lords are as brief as sparks. You have lived in the night, Samwell. You have felt it. You have not become what they are. That is why the world has noticed you." Sam's laugh was small and bitter. The world doesn't notice men like me." "The world does not," the raven admitted. "But the fire does. The ice does. The ones who dream under the roots of trees. The ones who see in the steam of blood. The ones who read the tumbling of stars. All the old powers stir. They peer about, searching for their champion." "John," Sam said at once. "Danny, someone brave. Someone better." "Bravery is cheap," said the bird. "There is nothing rarer than a man who will be gentle when the world tells him to be hard. You have killed once, and the act gnaws at you still. Good. That means the blade went through your own heart as well." Sam flinched. He still sometimes woke in the night with the cold of the other's armor in his bones, the shriek of its shattering hanging in the air like frozen smoke. It had been kill or die. The choice had been simple and terrible. "I'm no hero," he said for the 100th time. "Hero?" scoffed the raven. "The word is a shroud. Old men wrap stories in it. The world does not need a hero. It needs a fulcrum. Something small, placed exactly right, to move what cannot otherwise be moved. A Fulcrum, Sam repeated uncertainly. You mean like in the treatise on siege engines? A lever. Yes, said the bird. A lever made of ink and flesh and fear and love. You are full of all those things. Sam felt tears prick his eyes, stupidly. He scrubbed at them with the back of his wrist. What do you want me to do? The raven spread its wings. For a moment its feathers seemed to drink the light and give it back as a faint, unnatural sheen. The brass ring at its leg glimmered. Find the book, it said simply. Read the words. Speak the name. Light the candle. I've lit plenty of candles, Sam protested weakly. I've lit glass candles. Marwyn has 3 that burn all night long. Those are coals, said the raven dismissively. Lanterns in a single tower. Children's toys. The candle we speak of is older than Valyria and taller than the wall. It was snuffed when the world broke. It must be lit again, or all your steel and all your spells will be dust in the dark. Sam's mouth had gone very dry. If such a candle exists, he managed. Where is it? In the place between, said the raven. In the story that is not yet written. In the name that has not yet been spoken. In the empty space on the shelf. Sam opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Empty space, he echoed faintly. The ravens watched him. He moved like a man in a dream. The shelves loomed, cramped and crowded. But as he walked between them, he began to see it. Here and there, a gap, a space where dust had not settled. A lighter patch of stone on the wall, shadowless, like a ghost of a book. How? His fingers hovered over one such space. It was not big. The book that had been there had been slim. There were scratches in the stone beneath where its weight had rested. Who took it? The same hands that always take, said the raven. Kings and cowards and those who think they can steal destiny with their fingers. It has been written over and over, carried from tower to tower, burned and copied and lost. It is never where it ought to be and always where it must be. Sam turned slowly. Then how am I supposed to find it? He had expected mockery. Instead, the bird's voice was almost gentle. You are the bookman. You find what others do not think to seek. You have already carried a book that did not want to be carried. The dragonglass dagger in the snow. The old, cold, heavy thing on the island of the whispering trees. The pages that had flayed his eyes with their twisting scripts in bravos. The horn, black and burned-looking, that John had given back to him without knowing what it was. The horn was in his chest now. He could feel it like a seed. He sank heavily onto a stool. The candle flickered. What if I fail? Then the night comes, said the raven, unconcerned. The dead walk. The sea rises. The dragons eat the last of the living and then starve or freeze in mid-flight. The stars go out one by one. All that has been written is unwritten. It will be very quiet. Sam clutched the edges of the stool until his knuckles whitened. You're not helping. Something like amusement flickered in the bird's gaze. We are not here to help. We are here to warn and to witness. The doing is yours. That is another reason you were chosen. You know how to do even when you are very afraid. The words dug under his ribs and rooted there. He thought of Gilly's hand in his, small and rough and warm as a bird. He thought of the baby at her breast and of the other baby, Craster's son, crying in the snow. I did what I had to, he whispered. Yes, said the raven. Once. You will have to do it again 100 times in 100 ways. But first you must read. That is your sword, Samwell Tarly. You will not be asked to swing any other. He closed his eyes and, for the first time since the birds had begun to speak, felt the faintest breath of relief. Reading, he said, exhaling. I can do that. He began in the vault of forbidden books. Reading, it turned out, was not as simple as he had hoped. The locked door beneath the great library was guarded. But the guard knew him by now, and Sam knew the guard's fondness for arbor gold. One skin went into the man's hand and another into his own bag. And after that, there was only the smell of old stone and older secrets. The air was cooler here, The shelves were heavier, the locks rusted, the clasps large as a man's hand. He moved among them with careful reverence, candle held high. The raven had not told him where to start. It had not told him what the book looked like or what it was called. He decided that any volume bound in human skin was probably not what he wanted. That seemed too much like something Azor Ahai of the Tales would read, and turned instead to a row of cracked leather tomes marked only with little round studs of iron. He opened the first one and began to read. The script was Valyrian, Old Valyrian, the letters long and thin as knives. He stumbled through it, muttering under his breath, mouthing syllables he barely understood. It was a treatise on the breeding of dragons, and though somewhere in its middle he found a hymn to the sun god of the freehold that mentioned a sword of red fire, he could not shake the feeling that he was wasting his time. The next volume was more promising. It had no title. Its pages were made of some pale, smooth material that was not quite parchment. The ink glimmered faintly, as if it had been mixed with ground moonstone. It began with a description of a sky divided between 7 colors and ended with a detailed set of instructions for drawing down lightning. There were diagrams of circles, star charts, records of eclipses. He read until his eyes burned. The candle burned low. He finished the book, blinked grit from his lashes, and realized he remembered almost none of it. It had flowed through him like water through a sieve. He went back to the birds. "This is impossible," he told the strange raven. It regarded him from its perch with unreadable patience. "There are too many books. Even if I read all the books in Old Town, which I can't, I won't live long enough and someone would make me stop. I still might miss it. You were not told to read all the books," said the raven. "You were told to find the book. There is a difference." Sam wanted to scream. Instead, he sank to his knees on the dusty floor, his belly squashing against his thighs. He smelled like sweat and old paper and frustration. "How?" he said again very quietly. "Am I supposed to do that if I don't know which one it is?" The raven tilted its head. "How did you find the dagger?" it asked. He blinked. I tripped over it." "Yes," said the bird, satisfied. "Like that. You want me to trip over a book?" Sam said incredulously. "Your clumsiness is a virtue," the raven told him solemnly. "The gods cannot resist a man who stumbles honestly." Sam stared up at it, breathing hard. Then, slowly, stupidly, against his own will, he felt a bubble of laughter rise in his chest. It escaped him in a helpless wheeze. "You are absurd," he told the bird. "It is a heavy task," the raven said. "Absurdity is a feather. You will need all the feathers you can get." The book found him 2 days later. He had been copying charts in the Hall of Maps, his ink line trembling with each tremor of his tired hand, when Archmaester Valen summoned him. Valen was old and dry and sour, all bones and beak and the faint smell of pickled onions. His chain was thick with iron and silver, the metals of war and history. "Tarly," he said without preamble, when Sam waddled in and bowed. "You have been in the vault." Sam's heart sank. His hands twitched toward his sleeves, as if to hide the ink stains. "Yes, Archmaester," he admitted. I hope to find answers." "Answers?" Valen repeated, as if Sam had said he'd been digging for turnips. "To what question?" Sam's mind skittered across possible lies, found no purchase, and fell back on the truth. "To why the ravens have begun to speak," he said. "To why the glass candles burn. To why magic seems to be stronger now than in any account since the days before the doom." Valen's mouth pinched thinner. "Magic," he said, distasteful as if he'd bitten a lemon. "Tarly, you are not Marwyn. You are not a mummer to be dazzled by cheap tricks. You are here to learn the truths that lie beneath superstition, not to chase it down dark alleyways like a boy after a cat." "Yes, Archmaester," Sam murmured miserably. "Nonetheless," Valen continued in the same dry tone, "you are not the first novice to be lured by talk of portents and prophecies. The itch passes. In the meantime, we do not permit children to claw at doors that are barred for their own good. The tomes in the vault are not toys. Some have proved dangerous to men better grounded than you. Sam flushed. His feet wanted to shuffle like a scolded boy's, but he kept them still. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean. It happens, Valen said, with the air of a man discussing mold. Yet I am not entirely without sympathy for youthful folly. When I was a boy, burning with questions, my archmaester set me to copying what he called the heaviest book in the Citadel. You want to carry the weight of knowledge? He said. Very well. Here it is. Carry. I learned better that way than from scolding. His gaze flicked over Sam's bulk. You look as if a little carrying would not hurt you, Tarly. Yes, Archmaester, Sam said again, dully, already imagining some massive volume of trade accounts or agricultural yields. Valen's mouth quirked, the nearest thing to a smile Sam had ever seen from him. Do not look so glum. If you are to punish a boy with a book, it may as well be one of some use. Wait here. He scuttled into his private chamber. Sam stood sweating and fretting until the Archmaester emerged again, dragging a book on a cloth behind him. It was heavy. That was the first thing Sam noticed. It did not look heavy. It was not one of the great chained codices that sat on the lower shelves like sullen giants. It was modest in size, its covers plain, bound in some smooth, dark leather, unadorned. There was no title on its spine, no title at all anywhere. It might have been anyone's personal journal, forgotten in a corner. But when Valen gestured impatiently and Sam stooped to pick it up, his fingers sank under its weight. It was like lifting a stone soaked in the sea. For a moment he imagined he could hear distant waves. I want that copied, Valen said. All of it. Every line, every mark. No errors. You will bring the copy to me for inspection when you are done. You will not show it to Marwyn or any of his ilk, or I will have you scrubbing privies from here to the arbor. Do you understand? Yes? Sam gasped, cradling the book against his chest. Valen sniffed. Good. You may find your questions answered, or you may find them multiplied. That is the way of such things. Go. The book had no name, but it felt like a heart. Sam carried it up to the library tower like a child, arms wrapped around it, cheek pressed to its smooth, faintly warm cover. By the time he reached the door, his muscles shook. Sweat ran down his temples. His breath sawed in and out of his chest. The ravens fell silent when he entered. He laid the book on the table with a grunt. It thumped like a fist hitting a chest. The strange raven hopped closer along its perch, claws scraping. Oh, it said softly, in a dozen overlapping voices. Oh, well done. Look what has tripped over you. Sam drew in a long, ragged breath. His hands fumbled at the clasp. It snapped open with a sound like a sigh. The pages were very thin. They were not paper. They were not parchment. When he touched one, gingerly, with the tip of his finger, it felt like a cross between silk and a cobweb. Lines of cramped text sprawled across them in at least 4 scripts, all layered as if different men at different times had written their words over the same surface, never quite touching and never quite ignoring one another. This is impossible, Sam whispered. It's ruined. How can anyone read this? By reading what is there, not what he wants to see, murmured the raven. He bent over the page, candlelight pooling in the hollows of the letters. At first, there was only chaos. Valyrian and common, Giscari pictograms like tiny square-faced beasts, Bravosi shorthand, strange angular marks that he thought might be children of the ancient runes of the first men. Scripts that did not belong together, layered haphazardly, crammed into margins, running upside down, spiraling. His eyes swam. He thought of Valen's thin smile. All right, he thought thickly. You wanted to teach me a lesson. I suppose this will do. He dipped his quill. He began to copy. He started with what he could see most clearly, the line of common running across the top. Then he saw that the words he copied changed as he wrote them, the letters on the page blurring and twisting according to the shape of his own scrawl. He wiped his eyes, thinking he was more tired than he'd believed. The blurring stopped. He tried again. The same thing occurred. With each letter his quill set down, the letters on the page grew just a little sharper, just a little more like his own. Somewhere beneath the layered scrawl, beneath the palimpsest of centuries, a single thin line of meaning was rising like ink from water. His hand trembled. "Ah," said the raven, pleased. "You see. What is this?" Sam breathed. "A mirror," said the bird. "A river. A wound. A book. Read." So he read. It was not a story, not at first. It was a series of notations like the marginalia he'd seen in other old tomes, dates, times, observations. And yet the dates were wrong. The years given were absurd. They ran forward and backward, overlapping and contradicting one another. One was marked in the 73rd winter after the last dawn. Another was before the wall existed but after it had fallen. A third was in the year of the red comet, the other first one. The writers had drawn lines through some of these and scribbled corrections that only made matters worse. "Time," Sam muttered, copying the symbols as best he could. "Time is breaking. Time is a story," the raven said. "Stories can be rewritten, but the ink stains." Sam's scalp prickled. He read on. Here were accounts of strange phenomena. A day that lasted 3 weeks in ET, while in the Westerlands men swore the sun had risen and set thrice in a single hour. A fisherman off the Basilisk Isles hauled a net of silver fish that sang in the voices of his dead brothers. A city appeared overnight on the shores of Sithorios, filled with empty houses carved from living coral, and vanished at the next full moon, leaving only a ring of damp sand. Dreams spread like plagues. Men in Dorne woke with the taste of northern snow in their mouths. Women in the north dreamt of sweating under the shadow of a pyramid, their hands sticky with blood. "Conjunctions," Sam whispered. "Crossings, like the tales of the Dawn Age. Only this is now," the raven supplied, "or then." The dates swam. All of it could have been hundreds of years ago. All of it could have been yesterday. He turned the page. There were more records, written in different hands, different inks. Some were neat and measured, others wild and jagged. A list of births in Bravos, all of them children with eyes that changed color with the weather. A Magi in Slaver's Bay who claimed her blood could call rain, and who then drowned when the sea climbed up her tower on a clear day. A weirwood on an island in the Bight that had begun to bleed black sap that burned like oil. As he read, Sam became aware of a curious sensation. The room felt larger. The space between his skin and the world stretched. He had the sense of standing on a raft drifting towards something immense and unseen. "Magic is waking," he said, his voice very small. "Magic is only the name men give to the parts of the world they have not bullied into diagrams," the raven replied. "But yes, it wakes. Why?" Sam's fingers tightened on the quill. "Why now?" "Because the balance was broken," croaked the bird. "Because men thought the world a sword to wing and a field to carve. Because once, long ago, fire climbed too high, and ice rose to meet it, and between them they almost tore the sky. The wound has never healed." Sam swallowed. "The long night," he said. "The others. The things that came before them." "The first time," said the raven. "Not the last. The book you hold records each time the wound begins to open again. Each time the fever rises. Each time the world calls for a knife to cut out the rot." "Azor Ahai," Sam whispered. On the page, the name leapt at him from 3 different scripts at once. Azor Ahai, Azor Ahai, the Lightbringer, the Lord of Burning Dawn, the knife in the heart. "There have been many," the raven said. "Some burned away their own hearts. Some burned the hearts of others. Some failed. The world remembers the ones that succeeded and calls them heroes, though they were only men who happened to kill the right thing at the right moment." Something ugly twisted in Sam's belly. "The right thing," he said. "You mean the others, the White Walkers, the whatever this age's darkness is." "Yes," said the raven, "and also, no." Sam's head ached. He set the quill down and rubbed his temples with inky fingers. "You're not making sense. The world is made of opposites," the raven said impatiently. "Fire and ice, life and death, summer and winter. Men are stupid. They pick one and say, This is good, that is evil. As if the tide could be held on one side of the shore forever. You cannot cut out half a thing and expect it to live. Yet that is what your sword lords keep trying to do. They love their extremes. They call down flames so hot they melt stone. Then wail when the ice on the other side of the world grows thicker in answer. Sam thought of Melisandre's burning kings. He thought of dragons shadowing cities. He thought of the night wind over the wall. What is Azor Ahai meant to do then? He asked hoarsely. If not kill the darkness, bring the balance, said the raven simply. Wake what is sleeping, cool what is burning, melt what is frozen. Light the candle that shines on both sides. Sam shivered. I don't understand. You will, said the raven. Read. He read of past Azor Ahais. Not the tales the red priests told. Not the beloved man who had stabbed his wife to forge a sword. Not the shining hero whose blade had burned like the sun. Not the prince on the dragon. Not the warrior with the copper skin who wrestled the knight to the ground. Those stories were there, written in various forms, but each was marked with small neat symbols that Sam came to understand as meaning embellishment, error, rumor, lie. The truer stories were stranger. Once, Azor Ahai had been a woman in a city whose name had been lost. She had no sword at all. She had taken off her shoes and walked north until her feet bled. Where her blood fell, flowers sprouted that never closed their petals. The night grew thin and torn where she passed. The white cold things that were gathering there retreated because they did not understand softness. Another time, Azor Ahai had been a slave in a mine beneath the smoking sea. He had never seen the sky. He had no name. He died choking on dust and woke lying on top of his own corpse. His skin changed to the color of coal. Everything he touched thereafter became brittle and crumbled to ash. Chains, spears, the bones of the masters. He walked until he reached the sea. When he waded in, the waves hissed and turned to glass. The others like him were trapped, reflections in the hard, shining surface. The cold things went no further that age. They did not like what they saw in the glass. Another time, Azor Ahai had been a child. Another, an old man who only ever killed once by accident. None of them looked much like Jon. None of them looked like Daenerys. A sick, guilty relief curled in Sam's chest. You said there have been many, he told the raven. Why another now? Why again? The wound is periodic, the raven said. Like storms, like winters. You think the long night came once? Foolish boy, comes and goes in waves. Some are bigger than others. This one will be very large. Sam licked dry lips. Because of the dragons. Because of the dragons, the raven agreed. Because of the blades of obsidian and steel. Because of the wall and what lies beneath it. Because of the spells men wove in desperation last time and have since forgotten. Because of all the old powers that have been left to rot at the edges of your tidy little kingdoms. All of it pulls at the wound. All of it makes it gape. And you expect me. The idea was so absurd he could barely say the word. I don't have a sword. I don't have dragons. I can barely climb a flight of stairs without wheezing. You have eyes, the raven said. You have seen the cold ones and lived. You have sat in the halls of the dragon lords and not fallen on your knees. You have touched the weirwood's roots and not gone mad. You are one of the few living men who knows in his bones that none of these things are gods. You are not dazzled. That is rarer than steel. Sam thought of the men who had knelt in front of Stannis, of the way their faces had changed in the firelight, as if melted. He thought of how Melisandre had spoken of her lord. He thought of the slave girl in Meereen who had stared at Daenerys as if looking at the sun. He thought of Jon standing alone in the snow. He had loved Jon, still did, but he had also seen the way others looked at him. The way they had begun, even at the end, to lean toward him as if toward a steady flame. Men were always looking for something or someone to lean toward, and what they leaned toward they obediently became. I'm not, he groped for the word. I'm not charismatic. No, said the raven dryly. Mountains do not lead, they endure, and yet rivers move mountains. Rivers of ink, rivers of words. Riv. Heirs of choices made in quiet rooms. You will not be a banner, Samwell Tarly. You will be a current. But I don't know how, Sam almost wailed. I don't know what to do. This book just tells me what happened before. It doesn't say. On the page, a new line of text bloomed, thin and pale, like frost growing across a window. He stared at it, heart hammering. It's writing itself. No, said the raven. It is writing you, or you are writing it. The distinction is trivial. The line read, "In the age of dragons and dead men awakened, when the great wall was still standing and already fallen, a man of meat and milk and fear took the book in his shaking hands." Sam's hands were shaking. "Stop that," he told the book hysterically. "Stop it at once." The ink dried. The line waited, patient as stone. "Read," said the raven. "Right? Choose." In the days that followed, the world outside the citadel shifted. Rumors came in first on the lips of sailors and merchants. A ship in the narrow sea that had sailed into clear water under a blue sky and found itself suddenly in a black fog, surrounded by icebergs taller than the high tower, while somewhere in that darkness something sang with a sweet, terrible voice. A troop of mummers in King's Landing whose painted flames had become real fire on stage, burning their wooden dragon to cinders and leaving 3 charred eggs behind. A band of hill tribesmen in the Vale who had begun to dream the same dream, night after night. A dream of a city made of bone. Then came more solid news, carried by the ravens. Sam copied the messages, his pen scratching dutifully, even as his eyes tried to read between the lines. To the north, a chill that had never quite left the air after winter now deepened. Summer or no summer, lakes froze and thawed and froze again in the space of weeks. Men at Eastwatch spoke of pale figures far out on the ice, watching. At the wall, the wildlings reported patches of snow that did not melt even when touched with flame. To the east, the dragons of Daenerys Targaryen grew faster than seemed right even for dragons. One had flown so high its shadow had fallen on 3 cities at once. Another had beaten its wings in anger over the Dothraki Sea and turned the grass for miles around to brittle glass. The Red Priests proclaimed their joy. In the light of R'hllor, they said, the cold would melt, the White Walkers would fall, the world would be cleansed. But the book in Sam's hands told him that whenever fire rose that high, ice rose to meet it. The world loves its opposites, the raven had said. Give it fire, it will raise up frost to face it. Give it too much frost. It had not finished. In Azor, men said the shadows had begun to move on their own. In Karth, a war of magicians had broken out between those who worshipped the black stone and those who worshipped the blue. In the Summer Isles, children were being born with hair like spun gold and eyes like polished amber. And when they cried, birds fell silent and lizards died. Magic was waking. Sam felt it even in the heart of Old Town, in a place that tried very hard to pretend that such things did not exist. Glass candles flared on their own. Rats learned to climb smooth stone walls and then forgot how to die properly. Men dreamt of things that had not yet happened. Sometimes, when he passed the marble statues in the courtyard at dawn, Sam thought he saw their eyes flicker. The archmasters muttered and fussed and wrote cautious letters. "You see," all eras said one evening, pausing in a practice bout to push back the sweat from his brow. "The world is not waiting for you at all. It is doing quite fine on its own." Fine, Sam thought, as he watched 2 novices arguing over whose turn it was to clean the armillary sphere, their hands flickering with little sparks of light every time they gestured. He did not say the word aloud. The book followed him, or he followed it. It did not matter. He read at dawn, by candle and by glass candle, by sun and by moon. He read as much as he dared before exhaustion forced his eyes shut. Each time he opened the book, there were more lines to copy, more stories. Some of them were about other ages, other Azor Ahais. Some were about now. Some, he had the uncomfortable feeling, were about what could be. The ink often did not appear until he thought of a thing. He saw, written faint and hesitant as if in his own hand. In the north, A man with the face of a lord and the heart of a bastard woke on a table of wood, gasping, cold hands releasing him. If he rides alone, a great many men will die. If he rides with fire, a greater number will die. If he waits, the ice will advance unchecked. Sam clapped the book shut, sweating. "That's John," he told the raven. "That has to be John. They've brought him back. Somehow. Like Beric Dondarrion. Names are wind," the raven said. "But yes, the man you knew as Jon Snow stands at a crossroads. You may push on one path or another, or you may do nothing. Doing nothing is also a choice." "What am I supposed to do from here?" Sam asked. "I'm hundreds of leagues away. I don't even know if that line is true. Maybe it's just, his mouth tasted like metal. Just some awful possibility. The world is nothing but possibilities stacked together like pages," the bird said expressionlessly. "Some are thicker than others. That one is rather thick." Sam pressed his fingers into his eyes until little sparks danced behind his lids. "I'm supposed to tell him something, to warn him. But what? That whichever path he chooses, men will die. He already knows that. He's lived his whole life with that. Perhaps he does not know that he could choose differently," the raven said. "That the paths he sees are not the only ones." "Are there others?" Sam demanded. "Does the book say?" "Books do not say," the raven replied. "They show. You are not meant to obey it. You are meant to argue with it." Sam's laugh came out wild and thin. "I'm arguing with a piece of leather." "Good," said the bird. "Begin with the easy quarrels. Later, the hard ones." His first quarrel was with a sentence that said, "The man in Old Town did not write." He stared at it until the words blurred. His hand shook as he picked up the quill. No, he wrote beneath it in ragged script. "The man in Old Town did write." He wrote to his friend in black and told him not to ride alone, not to ride with fire, but to ride with his own heart and no one else's music in his ears. He paused. Then, heart pounding, he went on. He wrote to the queen with dragons and told her that fire called ice, that if she burned too hot the world would answer with a cold she could not melt. He wrote to the men who watched the wall and told them that when the dead came they must not think only of killing them, but of asking why they came. He wrote to the priests of the Red God and the priests of the Seven and the quiet men in their gray robes, and told them that their gods were not the point, that balance was. He wrote and wrote until his fingers bled, and the letters flew on black wings. He sat back, breathing hard. On the page, his words shimmered. The line above them, which had read "The man in Old Town did not write," slowly, letter by letter, changed. "The man in Old Town hesitated," it now said. Then he wrote. "Weak," sniffed the raven. "But a beginning." "Letters," Sam said urgently. I need to send letters. I need to." He was on his feet before he realized he'd moved. His knees wobbled. "Where's the ink?" "Not that ink," he added hastily, glancing at the book. "Just normal ink. Ravens, we have to send ravens." "You have no authority," the raven pointed out. "No seal, no chain. Why should anyone read what you write?" "Because," Sam's throat closed, "because they know me. John did, at least. And maybe, if the gods were kind and the seas were calm." Daenerys Targaryen remembered the fat knight of the books who had knelt awkwardly before her and stammered his introduction. And the men at the wall knew him, and the red priests knew of Maester Aemon, and he had been Aemon's student. And if they did not know him, they would know the Citadel's seal on the envelope. "All right," Sam said. His heart was pounding again, but this time with something that might almost have been resolve. "All right, I'll forge one, then." The raven made a sound that might have been choked laughter. "Oh, very good," it said. "Very wicked. Yes, lie to your lords. Tell them the world is not what it is. That will make you very popular." "It's not lying," Sam said desperately. It's telling them what's in the book, only not calling it magic, that's all." He imagined Jon's face tightening if he mentioned prophecies or fiery swords. Jon believed in things he could hold in his hands. Sam loved him for that. It also made him difficult. "Fine," he said, to the empty air, to the watching birds, to the world. "Fine. I'll write as if I were just a maester. I'll write about cycles and balances and the way great forces call up their opposites. They teach that in natural philosophy. No one calls that magic. I'll tell Dani that if she uses her dragons carelessly, she'll break the world's weather. I'll tell John that if he makes a pact with fire, he'll wake something in the dark. I'll tell the wall that killing the dead may not make them stop coming. That they need to talk, to listen." The idea was so absurd he nearly choked on it. "You expect me to tell Night's Watch men to parley with monsters," he said. "They'll think I've gone mad. They'll burn my letter. They might," the Raven said. "They might not. Choices, Samwell. You cannot make them for others. You can only toss stones into water and watch the ripples." Sam closed his eyes. "I'm only one stone. You are made of many pebbles," the bird said. "Big and soft and dense. You will make a splash." He wrote. He had never written like this before. Not copying, not summarizing, not gossiping with ink. He wrote as if the world were balanced on the point of his quill. To the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, he wrote the most honest letter he could, couching it in the language the Citadel would approve. "The histories we keep speak of another age," he wrote, "in which forces of extreme cold and extreme heat nearly broke the world between them. It is my studied opinion, based on both historical precedents and more recent events, which I need not trouble you by recounting, that the return of creatures associated with deep winter at the same time as the return of dragons is not coincidence, but the natural workings of a world that cannot abide in balance. For every fire, an answering frost. For every death, an answering life. I do not presume to instruct the Watch in its duties. I would only caution that strategies relying entirely on one extreme, whether it be the fire of the Red God or the steel of the South, may exacerbate the problem they seek to solve. The wall itself was presumably raised not only as a barrier but as a regulator, a line past which certain forces could not easily pass. To wield such forces on either side without consideration is to play with levers one does not fully understand. If the dead who walk are a symptom of a larger sickness in the world's balance, then simply killing them may not be sufficient. In the oldest tales, though doubtless embellished, there are hints that accords were once struck between living and dead, summer and winter, light and dark. It may be that understanding the nature of the others, what they want, what calls them forth, will be as vital as any sword. He did not know if John would hear his voice in those lines, under the careful Mayest. Early phrasing, he could only hope. To Daenerys, he wrote differently. "Your Grace," he began, scratching carefully, "you once asked me why the men in black mattered to a woman with dragons. You have doubtless found your own answers since, but if I may presume, I would offer another. I have read many accounts of dragons and their deeds. All agree that where they go, the world changes. Rains fail or fall in torrents. Harvests wither or grow monstrously. Plagues arise. Even the turning of the seasons seems to quiver. The freehold thought itself master of such forces. It was not. Your advisors have told you, I am sure, that your dragons are the only hope against the White Walkers. There is truth in this. Yet I fear that too much reliance on fire may tear the world's fabric. You could drive back the cold so fiercely that it runs like a wounded beast to other corners, there to fester worse. I beg you, therefore, to wield your dragons with care. Do not think of them as a sword only, but as a weight on a scale. Each town burned, each field turned to glass, will have an answering echo somewhere else. If you must fight, fight precisely. Fight for balance, not dominance. Fire without restraint may win a war and lose a world. He did not sign it with his name. He signed it Maester Samwell of the Citadel, though he had not yet earned his chain. He sealed it with wax he had stolen and a borrowed press. To the Red Priests, he wrote less directly still, trusting that some of what he set down in the book would reach them through their dreams, through the tongues of their flames. The book was not only ink. He could feel that now. It hummed faintly when he wrote. as if his words were dropping down a well that opened into many rooms. He wrote about the tale of Azor Ahai, about the woman whose feet had bled flowers, about the slave who had turned chains to ash, about the child who had refused to choose between fire and ice and had instead led her people into a cave where they learned to see in the dark. "Your stories are not wrong," he wrote, his hand moving quicker as a strange heat rose in his chest. "But they are not complete. The sword is not always made of steel. The sacrifice is not always someone else's heart. Sometimes, the greatest fire is the refusal to burn." When he was done, he sat back, drained. His fingers were blistered. His shoulders ached. His head rang. The ravens watched him. "So," the strange one said, "you have chosen ink as your weapon. Very well. You have thrown your stones." "It doesn't feel like enough," Sam confessed. "The world is so big. I'm here and John is there and she is beyond the sea and the others are somewhere in between. Words on parchment feel like feathers in a storm." "Feathers can choke a man," the raven said. "Enough of them." The first sign that his feathers were reaching their mark came not from the north or the east, but from within the citadel itself. Archmaester Marwyn sought him out. Sam found him in the library one night, standing over the nameless book as if it were an old comrade. The candlelight showed Marwyn's blunt, scarred features, the heavy curve of his ribs under the rough brown robe. His chain clinked faintly when he turned. "So," he said without greeting, his voice a deep rumble, "you found my old toy." Sam's stomach dropped. "Toy?" he squeaked. Archmaester Valen gave it to me. I swear I didn't." Marwyn snorted. "Valen has a bitter sense of humor. He thought it would break your brain. Instead," he flicked a glance toward the ravens, "it has stirred up things best left sleeping. How many lines has it written about you?" Sam's throat worked. I don't know." "Liar," Marwyn said, without heat. He stepped closer, laying a big square hand on the page. The book did not move. "This," he went on, "is older than the Citadel, older than Old Town. It was written first by men who walked under a different sun. Maybe by things that weren't quite men. Every Archmaester of the higher mysteries has had a crack at it. Most of them contributed exactly nothing. A few added their own fancies and had their names politely removed later. A handful wrote lines that came true." His eyes glittered. "You, it seems, are writing your own." "I don't want to," Sam said truthfully. "That," Marwyn said, "is what makes it dangerous. Men who want to write their own fates are usually too predictable. This thing," he tapped the book, "likes the ones who don't. They're more fun." "You say it as if it were alive," Sam protested. Marwyn shrugged. "It's old. Old things wake up funny. Look." He turned a few pages, revealing dense scribbles and sigils. "This was me when I was young and stupid. Oh, don't make that face, I see you thinking it. Yes, I was young once. I'm not some fossil that crawled out of a mine. I thought I could force it to tell me the great secret, the one answer. But that's not how it works. It doesn't answer. It shows possibilities. It likes to be argued with." He smiled, showing crooked teeth. "Once, I told it there was no such thing as prophecy, only men looking backward and pretending they'd looked forward. It replied by showing me how I'd taken a wrong turning 3 years earlier because I dreamed of a shipwreck. I've loathed it ever since." "You could take it away," Sam said hopefully. "Lock it back in the vault. Throw it in the sea. Burn it." "Oh, I tried," Marwyn said cheerfully. "It doesn't burn. It doesn't drown. It turns up again eventually in someone's hand who hasn't had the sense to fear it yet. Might as well make use of it while it's in yours." Sam stared at him. "Make use," he said faintly. "It's chosen you," Marwyn said. "Or you've chosen it. Both, perhaps. Either way, the damn thing is writing in the present tense again, which it hasn't done for decades. That means we're in one of its peak times. The wound's opening. The powers are stirring. All the old rubbish you people like to pretend doesn't exist is crawling out of its holes. Someone has to steer, or at least try." And you think that someone is me? Sam said bleakly. Marwyn squinted at him. You're soft, he said bluntly. You're fretted with doubts. You're more afraid of hurting people than of dying. You ask questions instead of jumping to answers. Yes. If someone has to play fulcrum between lunatics with swords and lunatics with spells, I could do worse. I'm not a fulcrum, Sam muttered, but his protest felt feeble in his own ears. Tell that to the book. Marwyn leaned down and peered at the current page. Ah, letters. You're writing letters. Very masterly of you. He scratched his beard. Well, that's one way. Far be it from me to tell Azor Ahai how to be Azor Ahai. Sam's heart lurched. Don't call me that, he blurted. Marwyn grinned. Would you prefer the prince that was promised? It's not very accurate, is it? You're neither prince nor promised. You're more of a surprise. He sobered slightly. Don't worry. It's not a title. It's a job. Jobs can be turned down. Sam's breath caught. They can. In theory, Marwyn said. Plenty of poor fools tried. They tended to die badly. The world does not like a vacuum when it's in one of these moods. If you don't take the role, it will find someone who will. Likely someone with fewer scruples and more appetite, which is rarely a good combination. I'd rather have you fat and fretting than half the would-be heroes out there. That's a horrible thing to say, Sam moaned. Marwyn shrugged. You wanted the truth. No, Sam said miserably. I wanted a nice, quiet life. Books, Gilly, maybe a small house somewhere not too cold and not too hot, with a garden and a dog. Marwyn's gaze softened. For an instant. Most men do, he said. And most men don't get it. The trick is to do what you must while trying not to break what you love in the process. I'm not very good at that, Sam whispered. I broke my vows. I took Gilly away. I left John. I left the wall. Panic rose in him, choking. What if I only make things worse? Marwyn clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. You will, he said. That's the nature of trying to fix anything complicated. You pull here, it tears there. The question isn't whether you'll make it worse for someone. It's whether they'll still be alive afterward to curse you for it. He straightened. Write your letters, boy. Argue with that bloody book. Ask your questions. And when the time comes, don't be afraid to put your own hand on the scale. Sam swallowed. What time? Marwyn's eyes flicked to the north-facing window to where, beyond the high tower and the sea, somewhere over the curve of the world, the wall stood. You'll know, he said, when the world starts to sing in your bones. The world began to sing sooner than Sam had expected. It started with a glass candle. He woke one night with his heart hammering and his mouth full of salt, as if he had been drowning. His room was dark. He sat up, gasping, and saw that the glass candle on the table beside his bed was burning with a pale, steady light. He had not lit it. He swung his feet to the floor, trembling. The air around the candle felt thick, like river water. He reached out, hesitated, then wrapped his hand around the slender, smoky black length of it. Heat did not burn him. Cold did. Images flooded him. He was flying, not as on a dragon, not with wind in his hair and the beating of wings. He was a point of perception, a knot of awareness slipping between clouds, through night, over land and sea. The stars wheeled. Below, lights flickered. Hearth fires, campfires, burning cities. He saw a great host moving through snow, men, women, children, ragged and thin, trudging south. Their breath smoked. Their eyes were hollow. At their head rode a man with dark hair and a grim face. Ghost padded beside his horse, white in the night. On the horizon ahead of them loomed the wall. He saw a woman standing on the prow of a ship with a dragon's head. Her hair streamed behind her like a banner. 3 shapes wheeled overhead, their shadows blotting out the moon. She was frowning, as if listening to something only she could hear. He saw a red temple aflame, its towers collapsing, its priests running screaming into streets where the cobbles had turned to molten glass. From the midst of the fire, something vast and bright and terrible unfurled, like a banner of light, and reached toward a patch of sky that was darker than the space around it. He saw a place of black ice, where tall, thin figures moved in slow, deliberate patterns. At their center stood something like a tree made of frost and blades. It pulsed with a dim, cold glow. Lines, invisible but real, stretched from it in all directions, threading through the ground, the air, the bodies of men, the shells of birds, the bones of fish. The lines converged somewhere far to the south. In Old Town, in the book on Sam's table. He reeled. The world spun. He clutched the candle harder. "Careful," said the raven's voice, very close to his ear. "You're not used to riding with your eyes open. You'll fall off." "What?" Sam's throat was dry. His tongue felt too big. "What is this?" "Magic," the raven said. "Sight, the candle burning at both ends. You asked to know how to help your friends. The world has decided to show you." "Ungrateful boy. I didn't ask," Sam protested weakly. Not like this." "Too late," the raven said. "You've put your hand on the page. It's writing around you now." Sam forced himself to breathe. In, out. In, out. He focused on the candle, on the solid feel of it in his hand, on the light it cast on the familiar walls of his room. "I can see them," he whispered. "John, Daenerys, the others." "Good," said the raven. "Can you see what binds them?" He looked with his newly opened sight. Etched on the air, faint as cobweb, was a network of connections. John was tied to the wall, to Ghost, to Melisandre's fire, to the corpses trailing behind his people, to the newborn babe of some wildling woman he had never met. Daenerys was tied to her dragons, to a clutch of dragon eggs being worshipped by freed slaves, to a man in a golden helm in Volantis, to the comet that had once burned in the sky and now lay somewhere beneath the smoking sea, cold and hard. The others were tied to every graveyard, every frozen pond, every place where men had whispered in fear of the dark. And all of them, all those lines, trembling and tugging, were tied to the book. To him, he made a small, strangled sound. "Interesting, isn't it?" the raven said softly. "You see why the world chose a man who worries about consequences. If it had given this sight to someone who liked cutting things, he'd be snipping at these threads for the joy of it." "I'm not," Sam croaked. "I won't. His hand cramped around the candle. His knuckles whitened. Somewhere north, John turned in his saddle, frowning, as if he'd heard his name whispered. Somewhere on the sea, Daenerys lifted her head. Somewhere in a red temple, a priest burned and laughed. Somewhere in a hall of ice, a tall, thin figure paused, its head tilting, blue eyes narrowing. Sam realized, with a cold that went deeper than bone, that he was not only seeing, he was touching. One of the lines ran from Jon's chest to the red woman's hand. It thrummed with heat. Another ran from Daenerys to a cluster of terrified children in a village whose name Sam did not know. That one shivered with raw fear. A third ran from the ice tree thing at the center of the other's cold web to the wall itself. It was thick, heavy, and slow. "What happens if I pull?" he whispered. "You find out," the raven said. Fear battled with a wild, irrational curiosity. He tugged. Not much. He would have denied later that he'd done it at all. It was a tiny thing, a finger's twitch, less than he might use to draw a line on parchment. The world lurched. Jon's horse stumbled. Ghost snarled. The red woman, who had been riding at his side, clutched her throat, coughing as if someone had blown smoke in her face. The line between them stretched, thinned, and then, quite neatly, snapped. The candle in Sam's hand flared. For an instant, he smelled burned rosemary and woman's perfume and old, cold stone. "Ah," said the raven, 1,000 voices at once. "Nicely done. Someone's leash just broke." Sam dropped the candle. It did not go out. It landed upright on the table, its flame steady. He sank back on the bed, shaking. "I can't," he whispered. "I can't do this. I don't even know what I've done. I might have killed her. I might have killed him. A small cut," the raven said. "She is not dead. She is merely less entangled. That man of yours will choose with his own eyes now, not through hers. The world shifts. It had to. The line between them was too taut. It would have pulled him into the fire whether he wanted to go or not. I had no right, Sam said. Of course you didn't, the raven replied. No one does. That has never stopped men before. The difference is that you'll lose sleep over it. Sam wrapped his arms around himself. The singing in his bones had become a low, continuous hum. What am I supposed to do with this? He asked. Learn, said the raven. You don't cut a man open until you know which organs are which. Learn the threads. Learn how they pull. Learn where you can make small changes that don't tear everything apart. Its eyes glittered in the dim light. You wanted to be a maester. Consider this an advanced course. He learned. He learned that every choice was a tangle of threads, and every thread carried echoes of other choices made long before. When he looked at John, he saw not just the man riding at the head of the ragged host, but the boy who had stood in Winterfell's courtyard, the child who had watched his lord father's head fall, the bastard who had gone to the wall half in pride and half in despair. He saw ties to Ned Stark, to Lyanna, to Rhaegar Targaryen. He saw the way those threads thrummed at the mention of honor, of bastardy, of duty. He saw how the line that had connected Jon to Melisandre had tugged at all of those, threatened to twist them into something sharp and bright and terrible. He did not cut any more threads for a while. The thought of that one neat snap in the dark made him queasy. Instead, he practiced smoothing. He found a boy in White Harbor whose nightmares were growing so bad that they were beginning to infect the dreams of everyone in his house. He saw that the thread that bound the boy to his fear ran through an old nurse, who had filled his ears with tales of the others until he barely dared to sleep. Sam touched that thread, just a touch. The next time the nurse opened her mouth to tell a story, different words came out. Not of ice and blood, but of warmth and hearthfires. As the boy's dreams softened, so did the dreams of those around him. The other's slow reach into that house withdrew, disappointed. He found a sellsword in Pentos whose instinct was to join the highest bidder with the dragons. That man's choice would have led to the burning of a town Sam had never heard of. He could not break the man's greed, but he could, with a little pressure, nudge him toward a different contract, one that took him east instead of west. A different town burned. It was smaller, fewer threads snapped. He hated that calculation, but he made it. You are playing at gods, he told himself some nights, shaking. And you are not one. You are not, the raven agreed cheerfully. That's why there's hope. Gods don't learn, they just demand. He wrote less in the book now and more in his own journals, filling page after page with diagrams of threads, notes on how this line responded to pressure or that one recoiled. He felt like a man walking through an armory blindfolded, hands outstretched, surrounded by loaded crossbows and dangling swords. Sometimes he wanted nothing more than to run away. He never did. Coward he might be, but he could not run from a web that had tied itself to his own heart. While he learned, the world continued to move toward its crisis. The wildlings passed through the wall. Jon negotiated, argued, bled. Without Melisandre's line tugging at him, he was slower to burn, quicker to listen. He took counsel from men who had seen the others with their own eyes. He took counsel from Tormund Giantsbane, whose fear couched itself in laughter. He did not take counsel from the Red Woman when she urged him to sacrifice a king's blood. Some things did not change. Knives still found his flesh in the dark. Men still whispered, traitor. He still died. He did not stay dead. When he woke, gasping, the thread that had connected him to Melisandre's god was thinner than it might have been. In its place, other lines had grown stronger. The one that tied him to Ghost, the one that tied him to the wall, the one that echoed with the wildlings' trust and fear. Sam watched all of this from Old Town, teeth gritted, hand hovering over the threads like a man trying very hard not to scratch an itch. You can't make all his choices for him, he told himself. You can't pull every danger away. That's not balance. That's you trying to write the story, and you don't know how it should go. In Meereen, Daenerys Targaryen crossed the sea at last. She came not as a conqueror burning everything in her path, that had been one of the thickest possibilities in the book, but as a woman who had learned, through bitter years, that breaking chains was easier than building cities. She still made mistakes. She still lost her temper, still burned when she ought not to. But Sam, with quiet nudges, with letters that arrived in her camp from maesters she had never met and dreams that she dismissed as indigestion, managed to keep her dragon's worst excesses in check. He was not sure, sometimes, whether he was doing it for her or for the world. The others advanced, that he could not stop. He saw their dead marching, their blue light flickering, their frost creeping down from the lands of always winter. He saw how they moved around pockets of warmth like water around stones. He saw how their king, if such it could be called, stood back from the battlefields, watching, waiting. It was in no hurry. It had all the endless patience of ice. He could not kill it with a tug. He could not sever the line that ran from it to the wound in the world. That line was deeper than anything he could reach. "What are they?" he asked the raven once, despairing. "What do they want?" "They are what happens when cold gets ideas," the raven said. "They want what everything wants, to continue, to expand, to fill the space they are given. Men think of them as evil because they are not made of meat. The others think of men as complicated snow. Both are wrong. What good is that?" Sam snapped. "I can't write 'Dear Ice, please stop,' and expect it to listen." "You might be surprised," the raven said. "Ice listens. It remembers pressures for centuries. It speaks in avalanches. The question, as always, is how to speak back." Sam thought of the book, of threads, of the wall. It came to him one sleepless night in the form of a sentence that appeared on the page like a challenge. The man in Old Town realized that the wall was a wound. He stared at it. "No," he said aloud. "That's stupid. The wall protects. The wall was made to hold back the cold. It's a bandage. Bandages can cut off circulation," the raven murmured. "They can also keep poison in." Sam's mind raced. The wall was made of stone and earth and magic. It had stood for thousands of years. It was not natural. It was not part of any balance. It was a line drawn by desperate men who had thrown all they could between themselves and the cold. A barricade, a dam. Dams held back water, until they didn't. He saw, with horrible clarity, what would happen if the others came in full force against the wall. If Daenerys brought her dragons to its aid and melted sections of it without understanding what spells her fire was loosening. If the entire structure, physical and magical, failed at once, the energy bound up in that fall would tear the world. "Oh," he whispered. "Oh no, no, no." The raven hopped along its perch. "You see," it said. "Very good. You take notes beautifully. We have to let some of it through," Sam said, sick. "We have to, like when a doctor cuts a boil so the foulness can drain. We have to open something, a gate, a controlled breach. You have to convince men who have sworn their lives to holding the wall that they must deliberately weaken it," the raven said. "Yes, that should be amusing." "It won't be amusing," Sam said, his voice breaking. It will be the hardest thing they've ever done. They'll hate me. They'll think I've betrayed them." "Likely," the raven agreed. "That is part of your job." Sam closed his eyes. In his mind he saw Jon's face as he'd last seen it. Pale, bloodied, resolute. A boy trying to be a man trying to be a wall. "Maybe he'll understand," Sam whispered. "He doesn't like walls much. Not the ones that matter, at least." He picked up his quill. He wrote another letter. The old maester at Castle Black squinted at the parchment through his one good eye. "The Citadel," he muttered. "Always timid, always cautious. Regulate the flows, consider the Bala. Enses ba. As if they've ever stood on top of the wall in a high wind." Jon waited, jaw tight. He'd returned to the wall because there was nowhere else to go. The South did not want him. The North could not agree on whose king he was. He tried walking away once, heading into the true north with Ghost at his side, but the dead had followed. There was no away. "What does it say?" he asked after a long silence. The maester sighed and tapped the parchment. "It says what cowards always say. Work with your enemies. Negotiate. Let a little bad in to avoid a bigger bad. It says the wall is a dam with too much water behind it, and if we don't make a hole, it will burst." The wind outside howled. Ghost's ears pricked. John stared at the letter. He did not know the hand. He did recognize a turn of phrase, a cautious, self-deprecating way of circling a point before landing on it. It tugged at something in him he'd thought long buried. "What if they're right?" he said. The maester snorted. "Boy, I've been up here longer than you've been alive. I've watched winter winds scrape men's flesh from their bones. I've seen things that would turn a septon's hair white. The only reason any of us are still breathing is because our forebears piled stone on stone and said to the darkness, 'Thus far, no further.' You want to start pulling stones out because some inkslinger in Old Town had a thought." John's mouth twisted. "It's not just ink. We've seen how the cold spreads, how it creeps into everything. We can't stop it just by standing here hitting it with swords. Maybe we do need to let something through. On our terms." The maester gave him a long, measuring look. "And how would you propose we do that, Lord Snow? Ask the dead to send a delegation? Set a place for them at table?" John's mind flashed, unbidden, to a boy with a round face and shaking hands who had once babbled about books and balance. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we send one." Ghost growled softly. Sam's hands shook as he read the line that wrote itself in the book. A man of the watch walked alone into the white. "Don't you dare," he whispered to the page, as if it were John himself. "Don't you dare." The book was dispassionate. The words remained. He knew what the letter he'd helped spur in John's heart would suggest. He knew, too, that Jon Snow would never ask a man to do a thing he would not do himself if he believed it necessary. "He'll go," Sam whispered. "He'll walk out there. He'll try to talk, to parley. He could try to stop it. He could tug a thread, send a snowstorm at the right moment, make John slip on ice, twist his ankle, miss the appointed time. He could tangle the path any number of ways. But if he removed that stone from the river, the water would find another way around. Maybe a worse one. What happens if he goes?" he asked the raven hoarsely. "Many possible things," the bird said. "In one, he dies and rises blue. In another, he dies and stays dead. In a third, he never returns and the night's watch breaks into squabbling factions and is overrun. In yet another, he speaks and they listen. That one is thin, very thin, but not absent. How do we make it thicker?" Sam demanded. The raven regarded him with one eye. "You know the answer. You've known it since you first killed a cold thing with glass. You are not a counselor only, Samwell. You are not a writer only. Sometimes the fulcrum has to put his own weight on the lever." Sam felt the world tilt. "I can't go north," he said. "Gilly, you want to leave her in a world where the dead do not understand agreements?" the raven asked mildly. "You want to let others walk into the snow for you while you sit in your tower pulling strings?" "No," Sam whispered. "No, but you are not Azor Ahai because you wrote letters," the raven said, and for once there was no mockery in its tone. "You are Azor Ahai because you will walk into the dark shaking and still keep walking." Telling Gilly was the hardest part. She stared at him, her hands stilling on the wash basin, the child at her feet. No longer a baby, toddling now, with Gilly's eyes and some wild ancestor's stubborn jaw, banged a wooden spoon against a pot. "You're going back," she said flatly. Sam wrung his hands. "Only for a little while," he said hurriedly. Just long enough to help John, to help the wall." He swallowed. "To help everyone. Then I'll come back. I swear it." "You can't swear that," Gilly said. "Men who go north don't come back. You told me that yourself. You're a bad liar, Sam. That's one of the things I like about you. Don't start being good at it now." Sam flinched. "I have to try," he said. If there's a chance that talking can stop all this. He gestured helplessly, meaning the creeping cold behind each late summer wind, the glass candle dreams, the way magic was boiling up through the cracks of the world. If I can help John do it, how can I stay here? You told me you would keep me safe, Gilly said. Her voice did not rise. That hurt more than shouting would have. You took me away, you said we'd be safe south. You left me here when you went to school. The words still sat awkwardly on her tongue. You promised you'd come back from Bravos. You promised you wouldn't leave me again. Sam's eyes burned. I know, he whispered. I know, and I meant it. I still mean it. Gilly, He reached for her. She drew back, biting her lip. The child, sensing something wrong, stopped banging and began to wail. Maybe you're meant to save the world, she said, over the thin, rising cry. Maybe you are, but I'm meant to save my boy. That's my world. I can't go north with you. I won't. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. You go. Talk to your snow. Talk to your dead men. Come back if you can. But don't stand there and tell me nice stories about only. For a little while. You're leaving, Sam. Call it what it is. He had faced ice demons and men with knives. He had stood under Dragon Shadow. None of it hurt like this. I love you, he said helplessly. I know, she said. That's why I'm letting you go, stupid man. If I didn't, I'd tie you to the bed. He choked on a laugh that was half sob. You could try, he said thickly. I'm very heavy. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. Oh, go on, she muttered. Before I change my mind and brains, go be a book. The journey north was a blur of roads and rivers, of inns and cold camps under indifferent stars. Sam traveled in the company of a small party of brothers from the Citadel, ostensibly to inspect the wall structure for signs of wear. That much, at least, was true. He carried the book wrapped in oilcloth at the bottom of his pack. He did not open it on the way. He was afraid that if he did, he would see a line that began with the man from Old Town died in the snow and lose what little courage he had. He contented himself with the lesser visions the glass candle now offered him each night, checking on John's progress, on Daenerys's march, on the slow advance of the dead. They moved like a tide, relentless, patient. Are you well, Tarly? One of the other maesters asked him as they rode through the whispering trees near the neck. You look pale. I don't travel well, Sam mumbled. Too much jostling, not enough reading. The man laughed. Sam did not. When at last the wall loomed into view, blue and immense and terrible against the sky, his breath caught. He had not realized how much of his fear was tied to that sight. How much of his growth had happened here in this cold crucible. Ghost met them at the gate. The great white direwolf stood in the snow, fur ruffling in the wind, red eyes fixed on Sam. John stood beside him, taller than Sam remembered, more gaunt, streaks of white in his dark hair. You got fat, John said by way of greeting. You got dead, Sam retorted before he could think better of it. John blinked, then barked out a surprised laugh. He stepped forward and pulled Sam into a rough embrace. Ghost sniffed Sam's cloak and huffed, as if approving that he still smelled mostly of parchment. It's good to see you, John said when they pulled apart. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there before. I wasn't sure you'd come. Neither was I, Sam admitted. They walked the wall together at dusk, the wind tearing at their cloaks. The other maesters had gone to look at cracks in the ice and mutter about structural integrity. Sam and John went to the place where the builders had once called the end of the world, and now simply called the North Face. The letter, John said, squinting into the white. Was that you? Sam hesitated. You recognized my cowardice in it? I recognized your mind, John said. Always worrying at things, always looking at both sides, always seeing more than the rest of us want to. He rested his gloved hands on the wall's edge. Do you really think it has to fall? I think if it falls all at once, we're doomed, Sam said. It holds back more than ice. It holds back a pressure we don't understand. If the cold hits it hard enough and your queen melts parts of it to help, the energy's here. He groped for words John would credit. It could be like opening every gate at once in a castle under siege. Chaos. Worse than chaos. It could break everything. John was quiet for a long time. When I first came here, he said at last, I thought the wall was simple, there to stop the bad things. A symbol, a test. Now I know it's a lot more complicated, like everything else. He glanced sidelong at Sam. You're saying we need to let some of the bad things through, on purpose. Sam's mouth was dry. We need to choose where and how, to make a narrow path, one we can hopefully control, or at least negotiate. John laughed without humor. Parley with the dead. They weren't always dead, Sam said. Whatever they are now, they came from something. Some story, some pain. The book says. He bit his tongue. John raised an eyebrow. The book? It's complicated, Sam muttered. Ancient magic. Very boring. Full of footnotes. Never mind. The point is, the cold is answering something. Something we did. Or that our ancestors did. Or that someone did. Maybe if we can find out what that something is, we can undo it. Or amend it. John frowned out into the white. You think they can talk? I think they can listen, Sam said. At least as well as ice listens. To pressure. To cracks. To shifts in balance. He swallowed. You walking out there alone with a sword will look to them like an attack. You walking out there with me, with no swords, might not. John stared at him. You want to come, he said. It was not a question. Sam shook with fear. No, he said, but I will. They stood together in silence, two small figures on a vast wall, facing a vaster darkness. Do you trust me? John asked eventually. Always, Sam said. That's why I hate this. John's mouth twitched. Fair. They left at dawn. Ghost came with them, white as the snow. They wore no armor. John carried his sword, but sheathed. Sam carried only the wrapped book in his pack and the glass candle in his hand. Will that burn? John asked, nodding at the candle. Probably, Sam said, but that's not what it's for. They walked north. The snow swallowed the sound of their footsteps. The air was sharp and thin, each breath a small pain. The sky overhead was a hard, flat gray. The world felt stripped down to essentials. White, black, blood under skin. Sam could feel threads quivering all around them. Lines of possibility. Paths where they died quickly, paths where they died slowly, paths where one lived and the other. Or did not. He did not tug any of them. He forced himself to walk. At first there was nothing. Then slowly shapes emerged from the white. Dead men. They came in a ragged line, their eyes blue, their movements stiff, like puppets on strings. The air grew colder as they approached. Frost crackled under Sam's boots. Ghost growled, fur bristling. Easy, John murmured. He slipped his hand into Sam's and squeezed once. Hard. Remember when we were boys and you couldn't hold a sword? I still can't, Sam said through chattering teeth. Then it's just like old times, John said. The dead stopped a few yards away. Behind them, further back in the drifting white, taller shapes loomed. The others, their armor shone with a pale inner light. Their eyes glowed. They watched. Sam raised the glass candle. The flame burned steady, a small, defiant spark in the vast cold. Hello, he said absurdly. His voice shook. We've come to talk. The dead did not answer. Their jaws hung slack. The wind whistled through their ribs. Sam swallowed. He had not really expected them to speak with tongues. He closed his eyes and reached, through the candle, through the web of threads, toward the cold. It was like plunging his hands into liquid night. He felt the presence at the center of it, patient, vast, alien. It was not a person. It was not a single mind. It was a pattern, a structure. It was as if winter itself had become aware. He thought of all the stories he had read of ice demons and cruel gods. He thought of how men put faces on the things they feared. He did not imagine a face. He imagined a ledger. Balance, he thought as clearly as he could. You want balance. Something shifted. The cold pressed closer. You were called, he thought, by fire, by war, by hunger, by... He groped for concepts that had no words. By wrongness. The warmth went too far. The light burned too hot. The dead were not laid properly. You are the other side of the scale. He felt a faint quiver of acknowledgement. Or perhaps he imagined it. If we change, he whispered aloud and inward. If we unmake what called you, will you go back? Sleep. The cold did not laugh because laughter was a warm sound, but the sensation that met his question was not encouraging. We exist, it seemed to say. We extend. Sam's heart stuttered. You can't, he said desperately. If you fill everything, there will be nothing. No heat. No difference. Nothing to freeze. You can't exist without us either. There was a long, long silence. Then, faintly, he felt it. A recognition. Not pity. Not kindness. A simple, cold understanding. We will not stop, the winter thing seemed to say. But we can slow. If the other side also slows. We will, Sam whispered. We'll try. The dragons will not burn every field. The fires will not be fed with children. The walls will not hold every fear behind them. We will let some cold through. We will learn to live with you at the edges. But you can't take the center. Not all of it. Or there will be nothing left to freeze. A thread trembled. John stood beside him, still and silent, his hand locked around Sam's. Ghost's growl had gone low and steady, a rumbling counterpoint to the wind. One of the others rode forward. It was tall and thin, its features sharp as carved ice. Its eyes burned blue. It looked at John, then at Sam, then at the candle. Sam held his breath. The creature extended a hand. It did not reach for John's sword. It did not reach for Sam's throat. It reached for the candle. Very carefully, very slowly, Sam angled the glass toward it. The other's fingers, if that was the word for them, closed around the flame. Cold flooded the glass. Frost raced up Sam's arm. He bit back a scream. The flame did not go out. Changed. What had been a warm, yellow-white light became something paler, thinner, like moonlight on snow. It did not burn. Glowed. The other's hand shivered. For an instant, Sam saw threads, countless threads, running between it and the dead men, and the ice tree, and the frozen rivers, and the chill in men's bones. He saw, too, a line that ran from the candle back to Old Town, to the book, to Gilly's hands washing clothes, to Daenerys's dragons, to a child in White Harbor giggling in his sleep. Balance, he thought again. The other's head tilted. Then, very deliberately, it released the candle. It stepped back. The dead shifted, their feet crunching in the snow. Sam's breath came in ragged gasps. His arm throbbed with cold, but he could move it. The candle's light, that strange, cold, warm light, shone steady. Was that... John's voice was hoarse. Did we? I don't know, Sam said honestly. I think we opened something. A path. A candle where they can see us and we can see them. Is that good? John asked. It's different, Sam said. Different is better than the worst thing I saw. The other stood very still. Then, in a motion so abrupt that Sam flinched, it turned and faded back into the white. The dead turned with it. They retreated. Not far, not forever, but back. Sam sagged, his knees going weak. John caught him. Easy, he murmured. Easy, Sam. Breathe. Sam breathed. The world around them was still cold, still white, still dangerous. But somewhere, deep under the skin of things, a line had shifted. They did not return to the wall as conquering heroes. No trumpets sounded. No one cheered. Most of the brothers glared, suspicious and resentful. When John told them what had happened, one or two spat. One muttered that they should have killed Sam before he left, to keep him from meddling. We didn't win a battle, John told them. We bought time, that's all. He was right. The winter did not vanish. Men still died in the snow, the others Kanti, nude to gather, but their march slowed. They stopped striking at isolated villages and instead contented themselves with deepening the cold around old battlegrounds and graveyards, as if feeding on the memory of death rather than making new corpses. Dragons crossed the narrow sea. Fire met frost on more than one field. Men burned and froze. Yet in some places where Sam had managed to nudge events just so, the flames were contained, the ice held. The wall did not fall, not entirely. At John's order, and over the furious protests of half the watch, a small section was thinned, not broken. Sam would not allow that, but reshaped, its spells altered with the help of the book and Marwyn's grudging expertise, its stones carefully realigned. At that place, on certain nights, if the wind was just so, men on each side could see flickers of light, like reflections of candles. They did not go through, neither did the dead. It was a wound, but a controlled one, a channel for pressure. "I feel like we've cut into the wall and left it half open," one builder grumbled. "Better a scar than a rupture," Sam told him. In Old Town, the book grew thicker. Pages that had been thin and ghostly now felt solid under Sam's fingers. Stories that had been faint possibilities hardened into accounts. He read of battles averted, of alliances made, of small acts of mercy that rippled outward into unexpected refuges. He also read of deaths he had not been able to prevent. Every time he saw a line that began with a child and a name, his heart clenched. "You cannot save everyone," the Raven told him, when he sat with his head in his hands. "You are not meant to. That is the whole point of balance. For every choice, something is lost. You're doing better than most." "It doesn't feel like enough," Sam said. "It never will," the Raven replied. "If it did, you'd be dangerous." Magic did not recede, changed. The glass candles stayed lit, but their light no longer came only from fire. Some glowed with a slow, soft cold. Some flickered with colors that were neither hot nor cold, but something else entirely. Men learned to use them not just for spying and dreaming, but for listening to the tremors in the world's web. In the north, some children were born who could walk in dreams not only through wolves, but through crows and owls, and once, terrifyingly, through the ice of frozen rivers. Their parents learned quickly that punishing such gifts only made them wild. Under the guidance of a crippled boy who had once flown with ravens and sat under the roots of trees, they shaped schools instead of cages. In the summer isles, the golden-eyed babies grew up to find that when they laughed, sicknesses fled, and when they wept, droughts broke. They were sought after and feared and protected in equal measure. In the east, the war of magicians in Karth burned itself out not because one side won, but because they realized too late that every spell they cast rippled outward into their own crops, their own children. The survivors refounded their guild with stricter rules, ones that forbade certain kinds of excess entirely. Dragons and others both became part of the world's new mythologies, not as absolute devils or absolute saviors, but as forces that must be accounted for. The Citadel changed as well. It did not become a temple of magic. The Archmasters would never have allowed that. But under pressure from Marwyn, from events, from Sam's own stubborn presence, it began to take magic seriously as a subject of study rather than an embarrassment. Chains were forged for glass candles and weirwoods, for the histories of prophecies, for the mathematics of balance. Young men and women came to study who had seen too much to pretend that the world was made only of safe things. Sam became an Archmaester eventually. He did not want to. The chain around his neck felt like a set of manacles. But he also knew that if he did not take the post, someone else would. Someone who might think the book in the tower belonged under lock and key, or worse, in the fire. "It won't burn," he told the conclave dryly, when they suggested that. "It might if we tried hard enough," one of them muttered. Marwyn laughed. In the end, they compromised. The book stayed where it had always been, in the library. Sam watched it. It watched him. Between them, the world wrote itself. Years passed. Gilly came to Old Town once to see the sea. Their boy, no longer a boy by then, rake-thin and dark-haired, ran along the harbor shouting at gulls. Gilly stood beside Sam on the quay, her rough hands folded, her eyes taking in the ships and the tower and the bustle. "You really did it," she said after a while. Sam blinked. "Did what?" "Saved the world," she said matter-of-factly. "Or helped, or made it not end, at least." He shifted, embarrassed. "It wasn't just me," he protested. "John did more. Daenerys." "John and Daenerys killed things," Gilly said. "You talked to things. You listened. You had them listen back. That's new." Sam thought of the others retreating, slowly, to the far north, not gone but quieter. He thought of dragons perched on towers, their wings folded, their fire banked. He thought of children learning to dream without being afraid of what they were. "I suppose," he said carefully, "that's a kind of salvation." Gilly snorted. "You and your fancy words. Are we still alive? Is there still bread to steal? Are there still stupid men arguing about who sits on which chair? Then you saved the world." He laughed, helplessly. "When you put it like that." She slipped her hand into his. "Do you ever hear them? The dead ones, in your candle?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "Mostly when I can't sleep. They're quieter now, less hungry." "That's good," she said. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you think it will stay this way?" He looked out at the sea. He could feel the web still, faintly. He could feel threads tugging. New powers would rise. Old ones would slumber and wake again. The wound in the world would never fully close. "No," he said, "but it might be long enough for our children, their children, for people to learn better ways to pull on things, to remember that every side has another side." Gilly grunted. "Talk like that and I'll push you in," she said. He smiled. "I love you," he said. She squeezed his hand. "I know," she replied. "That's why when the ravens started talking, you listened instead of chopping their heads off." He thought of the first time the strange raven had said his name, of the terror and the absurdity, of how much ink lay between that moment and this. "Whatever happened to that raven?" Gilly asked as they turned to go. Sam glanced up. A black shape wheeled overhead, just for an instant, against the pale afternoon sky. It looked, for all the world, like an ordinary bird. "It's around," he said, "watching, laughing, waiting for the next poor fool." Gilly snorted. "Maybe next time the world can choose someone thinner," she said. "You've had your turn." Sam patted his belly. "I've no objections," he said, "but I'll be here, just in case." That night, as the glass candle burned on his bedside table, Sam opened the nameless book one last time. The page he turned to was blank. For a heartbeat he thought, absurdly, that it had finally run out, that the world's story was over. Then, slowly, words began to appear. In the age when dragons flew and did not burn cities for sport, when the dead walked and did not devour all they saw, when men in tower and men in field both learned the taste of uncertainty, a man of meat and milk and fear wrote. He wrote badly often. He made mistakes. He pulled the wrong threads. He hurt people. He saved some others. He did not forge a sword. He did not plunge anything into anyone's heart but his own. He lit a candle that burned with both fire and ice and held it up in the dark, and some saw it and some did not. He saw at last that the title men gave him did not matter. Only the work did. Sam smiled crookedly. "No," he wrote beneath that, his quill blotting slightly as it always did when he hurried. The man of meat and milk and fear read, and listened and argued. He made friends. He loved. He made porridge badly and sang worse. He frightened ravens and was frightened by them in turn. He was not a hero. He was a fulcrum, and when he was gone, the world did not collapse. It wobbled and righted itself and went on. He sat back. The ink dried. The raven on the windowsill. Not the strange one, only an ordinary bird, or as ordinary as any raven in his life could be. Croaked sleepily. "Sam," it said, just that. No other voices, no other words, Sam blew out the candle. In the dark, the world's great wound pulsed, not healed, but scabbed over for a while. Magic breathed in and out. Dragons dreamed. Ice listened. Men argued. And somewhere, far to the north, under a sky thick with slow-moving stars, another stood watching the faint glow on the horizon where the wall stood and did nothing at all.